Is this bad for business, or is it the right thing to do now? Joining us now are James Ledbetter, Slate's The Big Money editor, and Ben Ferguson, syndicated talk radio host for Icon Radio Network. James, you got like 28 seconds, babe. Make your case for why this is fair and good.
Sure. This is a long overdue measure that brings U.S. corporate tax behavior into line with the rest of the way that people like you and me have to pay our taxes, have to obey the law. For too long, they've been shuffling money all across the globe in an attempt to reduce their tax bill and leaving, according to some estimates, something like $100 billion on the table that needs to go into the federal government for us to be able to do the things that we're doing, like stimulate the economy, and bail out the banking sector.
But James, you're not saying they're evading the law. They've been following the law. These aren't illegal tax loopholes. This is the way that the previous people wanted the tax code to work for multinationals, right?
It's hard to say, Dennis. I mean, it's certainly not the case that everyone is breaking the law.
Okay.
But as the president pointed out, some of these things are so extensive as to become effectively tax scams. Remember, of the 100 largest corporations in this country, something like 83 deploy these tax havens. It's a massive encouragement to move capital abroad rather than back here in the United States, where we need to create jobs.
Okay. Hey, Ben, go ahead and show James the error of his ways.
Well, I think the reality is we live in a global economy, and if you want to, make demonize these companies, these multinational companies as horrible people, they're trying to not pay taxes. The reality is, go talk to the people they employ and ask them if they're going to keep their job if we all of a sudden come down on them with their taxes the way that we're about to do this. I mean, Barack Obama, the thing he doesn't understand about businesses is it's a global economy, and just because a business is big or maybe multinational or maybe they don't pay all the tax that you think they should because they're a big evil company that you've made them out to be, guess what? They employ a lot of people. So go ahead and do this and see how many hardworking Americans lose their jobs right now. That's the reality of the situation. And just because you do business all over the world, and just because some of your money stays in other countries, and the key word here, offshore, people have made that word to be something so bad and so awful. The reality is there are big companies that have businesses all over the world, and sometimes they keep that money there, and it employs Americans in this country.
James, in 2005, the federal government decided we're going to take the 35% tax rate we usually charge when companies bring earnings home. We're going to cut it to 5%. We want to see what might happen. The Treasury thought, we might get $2 billion. They brought in $18 billion in new tax revenue by cutting the rate to 5%, as companies brought home $365 billion. So, James, why not cut taxes on foreign earnings?
Point is, we have tax laws on the books that they're supposed to be paying. If you want to talk about cutting taxes, that's fine, but that's a separate discussion. The fact is, we also have a deficit, which matters to the bond market, as Steve Leisman has pointed out. So I think, I've been hearing from conservatives all my life that balanced budgets are important, deficit reduction is important, but when you actually try to do something about it on the revenue side, they're always against it. Why is that?
Ben.
James, this president last week bailed out. He talked about bailing out the auto industry again. And who did he side with? He didn't side with the creditors. He didn't side with the reality of business saying, hey, they may need to get some of their money back. He sided with the United Auto Workers. Again, this president doesn't realize that when you're president of the United States of America, you have an obligation. Hold on one second. I'm talking about taxes for a second, but he doesn't understand that people that are big, companies that are big, employ a lot of individuals. I'm a realist when it comes to that. You can make these out to be evil companies and say they should pay more taxes, but I'll tell you this much. There's a lot of Democrats in the House and Senate right now that probably aren't going to go along with this because they know at the end of the day that American jobs are going to be lost because of this. And
James,
it doesn't matter how bad you make it.
I never use the phrase evil, okay? That's your attempt to put words in my mouth.
This administration.
Second of all, as you pointed out, we live in a global economy. One of the things that this proposal does is it cracks down on foreign companies that operate in the United States but don't pay United States tax code either. So it's equal in that sense.
Again, it's a great talking point, but the reality is there's a lot of good companies that have just as much offshore as they do in America, and we're trying to make it like 90% of their business or 98% of their business is in this country, and they have this little building over in somewhere, and they're putting all their money there.
That's not an accurate reading of the proposal. The proposal has specific limits, specific targets for it to meet. If you just have one little thing, that's not going to do it. But remember, we're talking about Citigroup has 90 subsidiaries in the Cayman Islands. How much real banking do you think?
How about Cisco? Cisco doesn't have 90.
All right.
I mean, there's a really good company.
Thank you very much for being here. We're going to go ahead and wrap. And let's remember, when you raise taxes on business, ultimately, they charge me more money when I buy their products. When Buffett speaks, investors